All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for for our first of several conversations this month surrounding mental health awareness, and mental health awareness, but specifically Mental Health Action Day. I'm Lou with the Tiltify team, and I'm very honored today to be joined by Meredith from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and Meg Kaylee, a frequent Tiltify fundraiser and content creator. So today's conversation is going to be surrounding the subject of suicide. So you may have noticed that we do have the content warning up top on this page and kind of in the line there. If this is something that's going to be sensitive to you, please be aware that we're having this conversation. But Meredith is here to guide us to have this conversation in the safest, and most intuitive and empathetic way possible. So wonderful. So what is Mental Health Action Day? Well, this is a day where typically it's a month of awareness. We talk about mental health awareness, but Mental Health Action Day is really driven by MTV and the MTV Entertainment Group to really give us some like salient points to actually make an action out of. And so that's kind of going to be some of the themes we're going to talk about today, is like, what are things you can actually do to ensure your the safety of your mental health, how to maintain it, and the biggest theme here is it's been a tough year, and folks need to have these conversations. And that's why we wanted to speak with our community members and our charity partners to do so. So I kind of want to kick it off by letting Meredith talk a little bit about AFSP. It's always a mouthful for me, but it saves more time than saying American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Yes.
Meredith, welcome. Can you speak a little bit about like kind of that, what your organization does, and let people know also like your role at the organization?
Oh, sure. So I am the senior manager of the Out of the Darkness Walks. That's my title, but I also am in charge of charity streaming. It's just not in my title yet. I actually started with AFSP in 2005, so I have seen it grow massively in a good way. It's just amazing what has happened since then. And AFSP, our mission is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. And we really truly do that by the funds that are raised go towards research, advocacy, educational programs created by AFSP, as well as programs for those who have lost a loved one to suicide. A lot of people don't realize that, but we do have programs and provide support for lost survivors as well. And every dollar really does count. We pride ourselves in the fact that 80 cents, 83 cents, I believe it is now, of every dollar goes to programmatic activity. So we do keep administrative costs as low as possible, even as we've been growing throughout the years. So we're really proud about that. And we are creating still new educational programs. One educational program that just came out is one for teens. We have a college program, but now we have a teen program. And we also have a program for elementary school age kids that we have partnered with another organization with, for younger kids to talk about their mental health and how to bring it out and speak about it, as well as teachers and parents. So we are constantly creating what we think will drive our mission. So that's kind of the general gist of AFSP.
That's phenomenal, and it's amazing. I think that it's so many of us have been touched by suicide, whether it's through loss or through attempt. And do you have like, people like statistics, right? And I think part of it sometimes is just a number, but I think sometimes it helps us feel like we're not so alone. Do you have a sense of like what, it is something that affects so many people. What does that look like in terms of like the population in North America, if you have some sort of
Yes, yeah.
detail?
Yeah, no, Americans, almost 1.4 million Americans attempt to take their own life every year. And over 47,000 Americans have died by suicide, and that's in the year 2019. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there are some more recent CDC numbers that have come out that include the 2020 numbers, because usually we're behind. And the suicide rate has actually been going down, and even with those new numbers. But of course, we're cautiously optimistic because those are early 2020 numbers. We all know that mental health has affected us this year and in 2020. So it's very much, optimism of the fact that people are speaking out about mental health, that people know that they can reach out. That is a huge factor that we're hoping is why we're seeing rates go down. But it still is something that affects everyone. I always like to say that suicide does not see race, gender, age, socio or economical status. It affects everybody, and that's suicide, and that's also mental health. We all have mental health. So, and we need to focus on it. And that's why actually Mental Health Day of Action, or Action Day, I'm sorry. It's Action Day, right?
Mental Health Action Day, yes.
Action Day, sorry. Day of
However,
Action.
Day of Action seems like a really powerful calling. I like that.
No, but the campus walks is what I run, and we had a Day of Action. So that's why I'm like, wait, I just said our thing, not their. But I find it so phenomenal that so many organizations and companies are coming together for this, because it is really saying that we all need to focus on it. And hopefully this means that organizations and companies will also focus on mental health as a company and as an organization, and look at their insurance policies, look at, what kind of mental health days are we giving our employees? Are we actually doing that? And really focusing on it. And I just find that phenomenal. And I'm really, really hoping that this is just the beginning, and that it isn't just, everything's going to be after this one day. So.
Well, I think that I know with the Tiltify community, we interview lots of Tiltify community members throughout the year, but we also survey them, and over 64% of our community said that in 2020, mental health was the top cause that they wanted to support or hoped to support in a future fundraising campaign. And like Meg, I think that you can kind of speak to this on a couple of, I think, really interesting levels. One of which is with your content creator hat on, and being a content creator, you have a tendency to being vulnerable, just being out there, always being out there. And so there's always a concern around the mental health of our content creator communities. But I think that you also, if you feel comfortable sharing, your journey as a content creator, and maybe some of your experience with, loss that you've experienced due to suicide.
Yeah, I would be happy to speak to that. Those are both really great points. I think that's something a lot of people overlook, especially when you're just getting into content creation, is the impact that this kind of work can have on your mental health. There are certain aspects of it. I mean, I think no matter what job you do, and for some people, streaming is not even a job; it's just a fun like side hobby. But there's always going to be ups and downs, right? Like nothing's going to be 100% perfect. But as you kind of do it more and more, you start to see some of the hard sides of it. The way it can be a little bit isolating, which sounds kind of ironic because you're literally sitting there talking to people for hours on end, but it's different than having that face-to-face interaction and collaboration with people in like an office environment, for example. So you don't have that, and because it's so fun, it can be very easy to burn yourself out. I learned that the hard way, because you get very hooked on it and you just want to keep streaming and keep growing your brand and keep creating content. And it becomes this all-encompassing thing where sometimes too much of a good thing can become a not so good thing because it can really weigh on your mental health. And I kind of learned the hard way that having work-life balance is really, really crucial. So that's kind of been an interesting thing for me to traverse throughout my career as a content creator, because I've had to kind of learn slowly over time to balance things, to take time for myself, to sometimes play video games off stream for myself, and sometimes play them on stream. And it's still a work in progress after all these years. I think a lot of content creators can agree on that. but it's definitely really important. As far as fundraising for AFSP and working with other mental health charities, I think a really big driving force for me was the loss of my cousin Samantha. She died by suicide. It was, I believe, in 2018 or 2017. It's been a few years now. Um, but it was a really difficult loss for my family and something that I had a really hard time wrapping my head around, because I think when I look at something that's gone wrong, I have kind of a problem solving brain where I want to find the solution and I want to say, how can I fix this? And looking at this situation, there was no way to fix it. All I could see was my family, especially my aunt and uncle and Sam's brother, really, really grieving and going through this terrible loss. And there was nothing that I could do to undo it. But I think something that both my aunt really wants and I really want is to help extend Sam's legacy, because she was an art teacher, and she was one of those teachers who her students would go to her after class and talk to her about their mental health. A bunch of her students even spoke at her funeral and were talking about how she saved their lives and things like that because of just being that kind of teacher that was really there for her students. There was some beautiful artwork I even found where her students were making suicide awareness posters and things like that in her class, and they were posting them throughout the school. And so she was just someone who really liked to help other people. And I think a lot of it came from her own pain and wanting to help other people, especially young kids who may be going through it as well. And so we just really want to extend her kindness and extend her legacy. And so after we lost her, one of the first things that I thought that I could do that maybe could help my family with the grieving process was doing a fundraiser for AFSP in Sam's honor. And so we did that. We showed after she passed away, a bunch of her students made artwork to express their feelings. And so on stream, I was showing off a bunch of this artwork so people could really see how much she meant to these kids. We talked about her, we talked about her life. People were sharing their own stories of suicide and the losses they had faced and the things that they had been through. And it became this really empowering thing where she was gone, but a lot of us were able to remember her and honor her and also open up about our own mental health and struggles. And so that was a really beautiful thing. And ever since we lost her, I've been, I think, even more outspoken about mental health than I ever was. I used to kind of hide it away and I'd always put on a happy face and stuff. But now, if I'm having a really bad mental health day, I just open up to my community and I say, hey, I'm having a bad brain day. I just need some time for myself. And not only are they understanding, I think it also can really help you as someone who other people are looking up to see, like, hey, this person that I like to watch and that I admire, they're having a bad day. Maybe it's okay if I'm having a bad day too. And you get kind of this really amazing ripple effect. So I always highly encourage anybody who's comfortable with it to share their mental health, especially as a content creator, because you have a voice and it can really impact other people and help other people who may be struggling.
Yeah, I see that. Our friend Ashley in the chat. We have two Ashleys in the chat, but Ashleen is in the chat also. Tiltify, Tiltify employee. So thank you for sharing your messages, breaking the stigma to talk about the taboo. And I think I said taboo, taboo. I didn't mean to say it strangely, but it did come out strangely. It's important. So I think one of the things on the side of the charities that do support folks seeking help with their mental health. They provide resources, and I rewatched the video that AFSP has on their Tiltify page today, which was beautiful and it's so fun. But really, it's that it's like almost aggressively but kindly starting that conversation about checking in with the people around you. What other resources, Meredith, do people have? Does your organization provide to have those conversation starters?
Yeah. So on afsp.org is a really great place to start. And we actually have a page that's specific. It's called Get Help. And what I love about it is that it's one page that I'm worried about someone, I have attempted, I have lost someone. What do I do for my mental health? It has, how do I find a therapist? Where do I go? And what are the warning signs? It has everything on that one page, which I really like because even if you're going there for one thing, you may see another and go, oh, I actually really want to know that as well. And I really think the warning signs is a huge deal because we all in our gut sometimes think something's going on with that person, but you know what? I'm not sure if that's really a sign. Maybe that's just, a phase or something. But I love the fact that, first of all, going to your gut, if you do want to reach out to someone, is really, really important. And we kind of give you ideas. And actually, the video you watched, Lou, was part of Seize the Awkward. And seizetheawkward.org, AFSP was a huge part of that with the JED Foundation and the Ad Council. With creating that, with also with everything that you can say when you're worried about somebody, and where you can go if you are struggling yourself, and obviously the hotline and everything. But there are really great resources there. We also have, for Mental Health Awareness Month, we have an entire page specifically with even more resources. And of course, it just leads more to how to start the conversation, how to have a conversation on both sides. And I'm also a loss survivor. I lost my really good friend, Robbie. I lost 2 cousins. I have friends who have lost parents, and I have struggled myself. So I read that. And it was actually postpartum depression was a big, huge part for me. I struggled big time with.
Oh, wow.
And I remember just thinking later on, if I had just told anybody, if I just reached out to anyone, I know that a family member and a friend would have responded and said, "Oh, I'm here for you." But the problem is that I was hiding it. And a lot of people do hide it. But I did have feelings in my gut about, like, my friends and everything. And, so I wish sometimes that I reach out to people, and sometimes I just bother people because I'll go, "Hey, your post on Facebook kind of worried me. Are you okay?" And of course they're like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I'm going, "Okay, just checking." But I would rather say that than not say it at all.
Right.
And so whether it really was a warning sign or not, it doesn't really matter to me. I say, reach out to that friend, send them a message on social, send them a text if you have their number, give them a call. How often do we actually, call each other anymore, right? Even if they don't answer, leave a message and say, "I'm really thinking about you right now." And if you do know, especially now, still, there's a lot going on in everyone's lives right now. And if you know of a big thing that happened to someone in their life, if a relationship ended, they lost a job, actually, if there was a death in the family or a friend, really reach out to people when you know that there's been a big event. Because, we know based on research that stressors is what leads to suicide and suicide risk. When those stressors start to just go on top of each other, and they aren't seeking help, and they aren't, it doesn't even need to be therapy necessarily, but if they do have an underlying mental health condition, and then all these other things are happening and they're not reaching out and they're not getting help, that's when suicide risk starts to happen. So if you start to see that in someone's life happening, definitely reach out to them, is what I know. That wasn't your question.
No, but we're no, it's an open, right? We're having an open conversation. We're learning about different things. I like to think, like, we get that string that pulls at our gut sometimes about, like, I haven't spoken to X person in so long. And sometimes you don't know why that's pulling it. And I don't know, but that's a good instinct to say, also to internalize it. Is like, well, am I okay too? If I'm thinking about this person, should I also, like, check myself and begin to, like, just listen to yourself? And I think that's the hardest thing, just as a person. I think, if Meg, just if you have any thoughts, like, what are some of your releases, and, like, how do you make sure that you take time for yourself to have those conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did want to add, I loved, Meredith, what you were talking about checking in on people who are dealing with those stressors. I was thinking about it from the content creator angle too. And I think that a lot of times if someone puts out like a tweet or something and they're like, "Oh, I lost my job," or "I'm going through a breakup," you see all these replies and it can be easy to think, "Oh, well, I don't need to message this person. They probably have a million messages already." But it's important to note that there's such a big difference between getting a reply to your tweet versus having an actual like heartfelt conversation with somebody about something that you're going through. So it's still worth reaching out. And I get that it can be easy to feel like, oh, well, they probably already have a ton of people reaching out. You don't know that for sure. So why not reach out and make sure that they have somebody? But to your point about taking care of yourself, it's definitely hard. It can be really hard. I definitely deal with a lot of imposter syndrome and perfectionism. And perfectionism can be such a hurdle sometimes too in this line of work because it can cause you to procrastinate, which is something interesting that I've noticed recently because you are like, you put something off and put something off because you're like, I want it to be 100% perfect. So I'll do it tomorrow and I can do it perfectly. And then you just slowly like keep pushing things off. Um, Especially when it's something creative because I always want to be at like my creative peak when I'm doing something. But taking time to recharge, like you said, is a really good way to kind of combat some of that overthinking and those feelings that you may be dealing with, and just practicing care for your mental health. I love taking baths with bath bombs. I highly encourage baths always. They're so good. Like I said earlier, taking time to play video games for myself, because that was something I stopped doing when I started streaming. I looked at it like if I'm playing a video game, then it has to be content. And I realized that I kind of lost touch with having that hobby for myself outside of streaming. And playing a game on stream and playing one off stream can be very, very different. So now I make sure that I'm taking time to play stuff off stream and on stream because I love video games a lot. They've always been a really great way for me to decompress. And it definitely feels different if you are creating something entertaining for people versus just unwinding on your own, like on the couch or something, playing a game. Um, and then also too, just reading a book, watching a movie, just making sure that you're carving out time for yourself to do things that you genuinely enjoy, and finding ways to compartmentalize the work aspects of your life and put them away for a little bit rather than having them on your mind all the time. Because I would find that a lot of times I'd be like, all right, guys, I'm having a bad mental health week, I'm taking a break. And then the entire break, I'd be constantly checking my email, or I'd be thinking about work stuff constantly. So it's really important to find ways to kind of set boundaries for yourself, whether that's like turning on an email autoresponder and not checking your emails for the weekend, or just not if maybe writing down in a journal and then keeping the thoughts in the journal and separating yourself from them. Finding ways to do that, I think, is really important and really, really helpful in the long run for your mental health, especially as a content creator.
Right. Well, I think that so many of us have been working from home this last year, and a lot of people, it's the first time they've ever had to do that, and so those of us who have been remote workers for a while, there's this period of time where you just get used to it. You eventually learn how to balance your life, but when you add the COVID-19 and the complications around that, and depending on where you were, you may not have felt as safe as you could, and so your day may not end because you're stressed. You may work too much. And that's definitely a focus of what we're talking about a lot this month, was like that is not sustainable. And so, Meredith, do you have any resources or thoughts on that behavior and how that behavior can be helped? And is there any resources that AFSP may provide with again, even on a local level, if like maybe is there places locally that folks can do to get support that AFSP may be in contact with?
Yeah, we actually have chapters in all 50 states, and it's just at afsp.org/chapters, and you can find it based on your zip code. Or if you want to find a chapter and information for someone else, just put in their information as well. And what's great is that locally, and also virtually now, and this has brought on a whole new level for bringing educational programs from the chapter local level, is now I don't think virtual is going to go away, because we've actually reached more people providing these programs virtually. So yes, reaching out to local chapters, there's a staff person for each chapter as well, and they can, whatever it is you need. If you say like, hey, I really need this kind of resource, can you show me what programs are coming up that I can get involved with? Talk Saves Lives is our most used, largest educational program, because it's very much for everyone and anyone. And it really is exactly what it says. Talk Saves Lives, and how it will save lives, and how, how, once again, how you can talk to someone if you're worried about them, and how you can see the warning signs and why it's a problem in our country. But also in terms of, working from home, and because this was a new thing for me too. I worked at the national office in Manhattan, and now I'm in California, and I'll be working remotely from now on. And it really was tough on my mental health, big time, because I wasn't moving anymore. Even just going to and from work was movement, and so I really had to figure out, what is it that's making me feel the way I'm feeling. And I couldn't, as you said, and Meg said this as well, I couldn't turn off the computer, turn off the email, just put the phone away. And I've learned actually to do that. I leave the phone in the living room now when I go to bed at night, and I journal at night. It's really
Wonderful
important
idea.
to me. Yeah, it's really important to me to not have anything near me when I'm going to sleep that has a screen, and movement for me is huge. And I think that's a big thing for anyone. And Meg can talk about this too, for content creator side of things, but finding what works for you also is because of you're finding what isn't working for you. So, substance abuse is obviously a huge issue when it comes to depression and mental health conditions, and then suicide risk as well. If you're seeing yourself or someone else starting to abuse alcohol or drugs in any way, that obviously can be one of them. And during the pandemic, people being home alone, and that kind of thing is obviously a problem. Anyway, but also lack of movement for me, I realized was a huge, huge problem. And I ended up getting a Peloton in the middle of the pandemic, because I was like, I was not doing well, let's just say. And like I said, I've had problems in the past, and but it was me realizing that was a huge, huge issue for me and my mental health. So, and we do have those resources on the website as well, in terms of just getting out in the nature. Movement is a big one. Journaling. I don't know about you guys, but for me, singing and dancing is a huge stress reliever.
Absolutely.
I will just crank on music, and I will either belt and drive my son crazy, or I will get up and just start dancing. And
What's your go-to song, Meredith? What's the one that what's on the top of the playlist right now?
Oh gosh. Well, I will always Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston.
Oh.
Always.
Absolutely.
I have to put down whatever I'm doing and dance to that song. But I will dance to anything. Sonic Youth, Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, Backstreet Boys, Justin Bieber. You name it, I'll dance to it. But those kind of things too, finding out, okay, I need to have a dance party in my living room for me to get through this day right now, or else I'm really going to struggle through this day.
No, that's amazing. And I think that, we say it time and time again, movement, exercise, fresh air, taking frequent breaks, all of those things contribute to at least setting a foundation for a more positive, pathway to maintaining your mental health. So there's we've talked about a lot of things that we can do, and there's obviously smaller bridges across awareness to an actual actionable item that we can take. One of the things that Tiltify might be known for is to actually do some fundraising. So AFSP is among those list of folks that you can find on our blog that talks a bit more about how Tiltify and over 700 other organizations, brands, and government agencies are making a concerted effort to give our communities an actionable item. So, we've talked about it. We have the resources. We've been sharing them in chat, the phone numbers. I think knowing if you do need help, you don't feel comfortable talking to a friend and loved one, at least not at this point in time, there's anonymity when it comes to the hotlines. There's professionals who help you. So there's, you have, legitimate support when it comes to those things. But there's also something that I know that Meg is very skilled at, and that's fundraising. That's raising funds for causes like AFSP. Meg, so you've been doing fundraising, well, pretty much that's how I know you. So forever at this point. What is, what would you say to somebody who is thinking about wanting to do something, but they want to fundraise? What was those first steps that you've like those three, let's say the first three steps, top three items that you would say would be like a pathway to success for fundraising?
Sure. I think just going for it, that's such a generic one, but I meet a lot of people who are like, "Oh, is my channel too small? I'm not going to raise enough." Like they kind of overthink it a little bit and feel like they're not going to do well enough. And I always push those people and I'm like, just do it, just give it a go because no matter what you raise at the end of the day, you're still helping the charity by raising awareness and every dollar matters. Like Meredith was saying earlier, I think literally every charity I've ever fundraised for, they always say every single dollar matters because it adds up the more people fundraise. And you're helping other people learn about resources and a charity that they may not have known about, which is really important. I think also taking advantage of the amazing tools that platforms like Tiltify have, things like incentive, polls, milestones. Yeah, you might have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and maybe eat something gross. But if you're raising money for a good cause, isn't it worth it? When we did our AFSP stream, my dad, this was when Twitch Sings was still a thing, but my dad and my brother came on stream with me and we were singing Push It by Salt and Peppa on the front page of Twitch. There were like thousands of people watching, and my dad was like, he was completely just botching the lyrics, and it was hysterical. But it was really cool to see him just like let go of his like, because he's usually like very like stoic businessman kind of guy and he's just like singing in front of thousands of people and like busting out lyrics and um I just loved seeing that and I think it's kind of just not being ashamed to just get silly with it and do goofy things for charity is great. And I think also putting social media to use, I would say, is really important. I think something that people underestimate, especially, is tapping into your personal friends and family. Every time I do a fundraiser, I always make sure to post about it on like my personal Facebook. I let my family and friends know. A lot of the support that we had for our AFSP stream was actually other aunts and uncles, extended family members tuning in from all over the country. And so that was a really cool thing that was able to bring the family together. But also, we were able to raise even more for the charity because those were people from my personal life who were coming in to support as well. So, making sure to just spread the word as much as you can and take advantage of every avenue that you have to spread the word about what you're doing. I think those would probably be my top three.
No, I love it. Like, and I just doing it, just even if you feel like it's terrible. We did fundraising just this last weekend with, or maybe 2 weekends ago, I don't remember at this point, with my son, and he was so proud as we hit a great goal for our fundraising. But then he said, "Well, Dad, what was the your first goal that you hit?" It's like, "Well, my first time I ever fundraised, I only raised $100," and he's like, "Dad, we did 10 times more than you did." And so he was just amazed, and it was just like Meg said, is that telling friends and family is, I'm not a content creator. I don't have a following of people who will come to watch me do, to do fundraising, but I do have friends and family who are passionate about, causes that I care about and they want to support. And so, Meredith, when you said you manage your streaming program for AFSP, and one of my favorite things to talk that Meg mentioned is that, like, there are thousands of fundraisers and content creators who have what you might say a smaller community. Have you seen like the success? What's the success you've seen with folks who've been supporting AFSP? What's that
Oh my
What's that
gosh.
persona look like? Who's
Yeah.
who's the average person who's fundraised for your
Yeah, well,
organization?
I would say on average that it is, people who have a smaller following, and they always, when I send them a thank you email, and they always respond with, "I couldn't believe like how many people supported me and how much money was raised. I was shocked." I get that all the time, and I think it's just really important that both of you have said that it doesn't matter. It does not matter how many people are following you. You're putting it out there, and you're like you said, you're spreading awareness, and you never know. And this is true with all fundraising. Until you put it out there, you will never know what kind of support you're going to get. And you can't just tell yourself, like how some people will put $100 goal and they'll raise $600, and it's amazing. it's amazing to see, of course. And so I would say that is our, most of the content creators who do a fundraiser for us, they are, considered on that smaller side.
Yeah, no, and it's communities that overlap that want to support other communities doing good, and that's so exciting. I love that.
Yeah.
What do you have any like forthcoming events outside of the Mental Health Action Day that you want to let folks watching know about?
Well, we have our Mental Health Awareness Month event on Tiltify. If you want to, because people are raising funds for mental health awareness, but they're not joining the event. But just so you know, we have incentives for that and everything, which is great. I am also planning on doing one for Pride Month as well, because obviously LGBTQ, we at AFSP definitely, we always create a page and a huge focus around Pride Month and LGBTQ community, and making sure it's mental health really is for all. It really is for everyone. And we always provide resources as well. So I'm going to make sure that on that event page, there's all of that, all the resources. For everyone who raises funds for us, there is the Dropbox with all that. We have a resources folder specifically with actually everything in that I've been talking about how to reach out, the warning signs, also specific flyers for content creators. So like how to answer if there's someone struggling in a chat, what to say, what a moderator can say and how you respond, things like that as well. And then we also have video links and graphics and all that stuff. And that's for everything. But every time there is a special month like Mental Health Awareness Month, we have specific graphics for that as well and information for that. So, but in terms of like AFSP events, is that what you were also?
No, I just want to know what's going on. If there's something you wanted to share with everyone, now's the time to talk about it.
I mean, I was doing Tiltify events, because I'm like.
No, that's great. I think that you touched on something that I think is important to talk about, kind of leaning back into the content creator side of things, is if you do manage a community, Meg, have you seen, or maybe have you had experience with making sure that resources like Meredith is talking about, for mental health, do you make those available at least in some fashion, or what was your recommendation as to how's the best way to implement something like that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that one of the challenging things about streaming is that a lot of times you have, this parasocial relationship where people will kind of view you as their personal friend. And a lot of times that can result in people really opening up about their struggles. And while obviously you want to support them, it's also important to set boundaries for yourself, especially when you're not. I mean, maybe some people are, but I think for the most part, most content creators are not licensed professionals trained to properly handle someone's mental health problems. And so I think having resources on hand is really great. Having like a bot command, like we were talking about, or maybe even a pre-typed out kind of message if someone messages you on Discord or Twitter, depending on where your DMs are accessible. Just having something that says, hey, I support you. You're strong and you got this. But also, I think these are some great resources that may be better equipped to help you with what you're facing right now, is important. I think it's really, really crucial that streamers make sure that they're not taking on everything that everyone else is going through, because that really weighs on a person after a while.
No, absolutely. Setting expectations with yourself and the people who come into your spaces is really important. So those are great suggestions, Meg. I don't know if there's any questions that'd be appropriate for folks, listening to ask, but now would be that time. So I'll kind of give folks just a little bit. I want to thank Meredith for taking the time and being so brave to share all of your experiences. Meg, your journey has been wonderful, and I'm so glad that you're able to join us in this conversation today, and really kicking off, a month of conversations. We'll have conversations all next week with all sorts of charity partners, all themed around this idea that an actionable item, you can make an action out of helping yourself or others with their mental health. Um, any final thoughts you want to share with just like we want to your shirt says hope, and what is a hopeful thing that you can share with people listening if they are struggling or if they know someone who's struggling?
Oh, I would say, let's see. Sorry, I'm like, I'm thinking of which one first.
I was going to say, I think you have something to say, but I don't
yeah.
say first. So
I'm never speechless. I'm sure you figured that out. No, so for someone who is struggling, know that you are not alone I hope is a hopeful thing to say. Know that there is help out there for you. And I know what it feels like, and I do understand that it can be really tough to do that. It can actually feel like it's a lot of energy to actually reach out for help. Know that there is the crisis text line, there is the suicide prevention lifeline. Actually, next year there will be the 988 number as well. Those are all numbers that everyone should know, actually. And that you can, if there is someone you can trust who can help you get through that hurdle, to find a therapist, to really talk to someone, and know that there are so many people out there. There are therapists who now talk to you virtually, because I know a lot of people don't like to even get in that car and go to the office and find that perfect therapist, because it is like finding, it is kind of like dating sometimes with a therapist. But now it's virtual. So many therapists are virtual. You can just click on that computer and start talking to someone, and know that it is out there for you, and that there is hope out there. And then what the other question was for
no, I think
someone.
that actually made me think about, I think a lot of people feel that I don't have access to support for my mental health because I can't afford it. What are some resources that folks can have access to something they probably need if they think they need it, but they're scared to do it because they can't afford it? Is there resources that AFSP can at least guide people to?
Yeah, well, on the website there are, and that's in that get help section of like, I'm searching for help. There are links to finding a therapist. And usually, I will say this, sometimes it's also depending on what state you're in, what county you're in, where you actually can find even more links specific to your area. And you can find areas that are more like clinics and free therapy. And it does take a little bit of searching sometimes, because a lot of times you will search for a therapist and it'll say, doesn't take insurance. But if you have insurance, you can get reimbursed. But that's a lot for someone
Right.
who is, if you're in a crisis, you should definitely contact a crisis line or reach out to someone so you're not alone. But if you really feel like I've got to get through this, I'm having a tough time, it can feel really overwhelming. So I definitely would say have someone even help you search through those links, because it can be a lot, and it can feel really heavy sometimes. But many areas have local, like I said, clinics or even hospitals that have free therapy area sections to it, and free family therapy as well exists out there too. So you can start at those links at our website, but if you just Google like your area and say free, therapy, and see what happens. I know New York City has a lot of, Thrive NYC. So there is a lot of that out there.
We did have a good question. If I need to call for a welfare check on someone, is it better to use 911 or a non-emergency line?
If you are worried about someone and they're not in a crisis, call the hotline or the crisis text line. If you know that the person at that moment is in a crisis situation, then that's when you call 911.
And that would be like identified through like the specific language they may be using. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say, if they're saying like, I'm having thoughts of suicide versus, I am thinking and it's going to be today and it's going to be right now, or kind of, those types of different language. It's very,
try to,
and Oh, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
I said it feels like there's like an immediacy to it. Like if you feel like
Yes,
it's
yes. Yeah. And
okay.
you will know that. And I know a lot of people get very upset if you call 911 because some people have not had great experiences. And actually, AFSP is working with emergency rooms and hospitals on changing that and how people who come in with a mental health crisis are treated. So we are working on that as well. And I know that that happens, but just know that you are at least stopping them in that moment and the importance of that. And it's also about treatment and making sure that they get what they need when they come out of the hospital, though, too, is also a very, that they're not
Right.
alone when they're leaving the hospital. That's another thing we're working on emergency rooms with, is you
Right,
just
but
don't let someone walk out, kind of thing.
right, because mental health is not transactional, right? It's not
Yeah.
like you have to maintain it. It's not like I have an upset stomach, I can take something for that. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
if I have depression or anxiety, that's something else, that it's mind and body that both needs to be maintained over a longer period of time. So that's great to know that that's something that's being
Sure.
supported or at least looked after from
Yeah.
AFSP.
Yeah. And I will
Um,
say too, just real quick, it's okay to ask someone if they're thinking about suicide.
yeah,
It's not going to put it in their heads. It's totally fine to say, is this what you're thinking of right now? Are you thinking of harming yourself? It is totally safe and okay, because then they're going to get it out, and getting it out is actually what helps that person and then helps you to know how you can help them.
it's amazing. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Definitely, very very pleased to be able to have this chat with the both of you today. Like I said, there's more, but there's more conversations next week as well as we continue our journey through. You know, continually to talk about this. We may talk about similar themes with different organizations and different creators, but the important thing is that we're taking action by talking and by calling our community to action through supporting amazing organizations like AFSP. Thank you both so much. We do have one question, and it's not related to our topic today. Meg, Robin in chat wants to know, how many pops do you have on the shelf behind you?
It's been a while since I actually took count, but I know it's over 200.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of plastic.
Yeah, it really is. And then that shop on the far, all the way over there is not just pops, it's like other figures too. So I have like statues and a bunch of other stuff too. I have a problem, but I don't want it to be solved.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. I purposely blur out all of my stuff so that people can't judge me. I know what's there. It's important for me. It's amazing.
It's
Well, I hope you
amazing.
both have an amazing weekend. Again, thank
Thank
you for taking
you.
your Friday afternoon hanging out with us here at Tiltify. And we can't wait
Yes.
to see what
Thank
you do
you.
next. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Anytime. Thanks for
Thanks for
having us.
having.
All right, we'll go, and we're going now here.